Take the general population. The base rate for ADHD is roughly 5%. For autism, it hovers around 1%. If these were biologically independent conditions, the probability of them occurring in the same person would be the product of those rates, 5% of 1%. But the actual rate of ADHD observed in clinics is 3 to 5 times higher than that independent probability. This divergence indicates that the core assumption of independence is incorrect. These aren't separate biological conditions that happen to co-occur. They are intrinsically linked within the underlying architecture. Because our current labels fail to define distinct biological boundaries, they also fail to predict how patients will respond to help. Within a single diagnostic category, a standard intervention might produce a recovery in one patient and a total lack of response in the next. The label describes the symptom, but it ignores the variation in the individual sharing it. These two phenomena, inflated comorbidity and treatment failure, suggest our descriptive classification system is failing to capture the underlying mechanics of human biology. This structural failure originates from a mathematical mistake, the categorical projection error. Clinical frameworks like the DSM-5 and ICD-11 organize human behavior into discrete diagnostic bins. You are either in a category or you are out. This rigid structure stands in contrast to the continuous nature of cognitive architecture. Mapping a fluid reality onto a flat grid destroys the terrain's nuances. We call this mechanistic degeneration. It occurs when distinct underlying neural mechanisms are compressed into the identical diagnostic label. Working memory deficits, for instance, appear in both ADHD and aging populations. While the symptom looks the same on a checklist, it is driven by entirely different architectural flaws. The Information Manifold Model offers an alternative, treating behavioral variation as a position within a continuous parameter space. This shift toward a parametric model allows us to analyze the physics of an individual's cognitive architecture, moving beyond the limitations of symptom-based clustering. The RPCS1 framework defines a cognitive receiver through 5 continuous parameters. Temporal integration determines the window over which prior signals influence your current state, while signal gain measures the amplification of those incoming signals. The filtering threshold sets the cutoff for noise rejection, and update elasticity tracks how quickly a mind revises its beliefs when presented with new data. Finally, ambiguity resolution measures the bias toward making a decisive interpretation when a signal is unclear. This 5-parameter receiver interacts with a 2-part environmental matrix. H represents environmental entropy, unpredictability, and P represents predictability pressure. These variables interact along continuous scales. There are no binary switches. A mind's state is determined by where these values sit relative to one another. This means every human mind occupies a specific, exact coordinate vector within a 5-dimensional parameter space. To understand how a mind responds to its surroundings, we use a stability potential equation, V of RE. This equation calculates the cognitive stress generated by a specific receiver coordinate in a specific environment. Cognitive dynamics follow a gradient flow. Behavior naturally moves toward the lowest point on the landscape, seeking stable attractor states. A homeostatic restoring force works in parallel, preventing the mind from collapsing entirely into a single state and preserving the individual's unique architectural baseline. If we map the 5 dimensions onto a 2D topographic contour, we can visualize this process. Here, we plot signal gain against temporal integration.
An ADHD-like profile occupies high temporal integration, high signal gain, and low filtering, representing a region of high instability. If environmental entropy spikes, the gradient beneath that coordinate steepens. The environment becomes mathematically steeper for that mind, punishing that specific architectural mix. Psychological distress is the mathematical result of this high stability potential, a spatial mismatch between the receiver's coordinates and the environment. This geometric perspective provides the answer to the comorbidity paradox through the overlap theorem. In a continuous parameter space, the basins of attraction, the regions where behaviors settle, naturally and frequently overlap. When we drop a discrete diagnostic grid over these overlapping regions, any individual falling into that shared space is labeled with multiple disorders.
Excess comorbidity is therefore a geometric certainty of the categorical projection rather than a biological anomaly. These coordinates are not just theoretical abstractions, they are grounded in physical measurements. Temporal integration is measured through the n-back working memory task, which identifies the limits of a receiver's integration window. The filtering threshold is mapped through the Stroop task, providing a concrete measure of attentional gating and noise rejection. Under RPCS1, diagnosis shifts from symptom matching to precise parameter estimation, using established cognitive assays to locate an individual's exact position in the manifold. This model points to a specific intervention strategy called the matching principle. System stability is maximized when a receiver's temporal integration is inversely proportional to environmental entropy. Traditional therapy often attempts to move the cognitive coordinate, trying to shift the individual's internal parameters to reach a more stable region of the landscape. But altering an individual's underlying biological architecture is profoundly slow, difficult, and often met with heavy homeostatic resistance. A faster approach is to shift the topological map itself by modifying the environment. For an individual with low temporal integration, reducing effective entropy through structure and predictability flattens the local gradient, creating immediate mathematical stability without requiring the individual to move. Clinical intervention can therefore prioritize environmental matching to lower stability potential, focusing on the external context that creates the stress. These dynamics scale from the individual mind to a coupled network of multiple receivers. A group is governed by a collective stability potential, which tracks the stability of the entire network. This includes a coupling term, which measures the strength of the behavioral influence members have on one another. This link is the mechanism behind the instability propagation proposition. When one member of a team becomes overloaded, the resulting behavioral noise injects into the rest of the network, artificially raising the environmental entropy for everyone else. According to the Diversity Coverage Theorem, the best defense for a group is cognitive heterogeneity. A team's ability to remain stable across different environments increases as the diversity of its members' receiver coordinates increases. This environmental coverage continues to rise until it reaches a saturation threshold, where adding more diversity begins to provide diminishing returns. Because a homogeneous team clusters at a single coordinate, their combined environmental coverage is narrow. If the environment shifts beyond that cluster's stable range, the entire group loses stability simultaneously. From the delicate architectural limits of a single individual mind to the massive stress propagation of an entire organization, human behavior is governed by the exact same mathematical manifold.